So let's start with Domain 1 in our CISSP, the Security and Risk Management. We're going to talk about things like security, risk, compliance, laws, regulations, and some business continuity. Now, there are some key areas for Domain 1 that we really want to focus on according to the Candidate Information Bulletin, the CIB. We're going to talk about the CIA Triad. We're going to talk about security governance, the compliance, those legal and regulatory issues. Talk about professional ethics and security policies, business continuity again, the personnel security policies, some risk management concepts, threat modeling, acquisition strategies, and then finally wrap it up with some training and awareness for our end users. So let's talk about that first one, the CIA Triad. That's our confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And you can look that up. I got a little picture there on the slide, and there are tons of those CIA triads out there. I think I just pulled that off Google Images, to be honest with you. Everybody's got their own little flavor on the color scheme and how it's supposed to look, but they always make it like a triangle because it's a triad, right? Triangle. So we have our confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But what does that mean? Well, confidentiality is, keep away from my stuff. That is mine. That's my private stuff. If somebody was to tell you a secret in confidence, that's exactly what it is. It's a secret between you and them. Nobody else is supposed to know what that secret is or what the data is. So confidentiality, well, it's about privacy. Who has access to what? To what materials? To what data that we have inside of our organization? We want our data to be confidential. We want it to keep it private from attackers or hackers or other businesses or other governments. Just depends on where you work and what organization you're working with. Confidentiality also supports lease privilege. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in another section, but lease privilege is you only have the rights that you need to do your job. You don't have extra permissions. You don't have extra access to things that you don't need. If you are data entry clerk, all right, so you're sitting at a computer screen all day and you're entering data for an organization. You don't need administrative rights necessarily to do your job. You don't need to install software. You don't need to be able to run a backup or remote access into that terminal probably, because you're sitting right there. So that supports least privilege. Now, a very good example of confidentiality is using encryption. And we'll talk about encryption throughout this whole series, but encryption is taking data and making it where it's not readable by somebody else without knowing the key. If I spoke my own language, I could encrypt English, and if you knew how I encrypted it or changed the language around, you could decipher that. You could understand. But if nobody else did, it would just sound like a bunch of gibberish to them. That's privacy, right? I understand it, you understand it, but that's the confidentiality, keeping it secret, staying away from my stuff. But what about integrity, the I when it comes to the CIA Triad? Integrity means the trustworthiness. If you need to have any key association or word associations, when you think of integrity, you need to think of trustworthiness. And we're talking about the trustworthiness of the data, or it could be a machine. We may have a machine in our organization that has been compromised, so the integrity of that machine is now in question. Is there an attacker inside of that machine with malware, with a Trojan, with a backdoor, with a rootkit? Has that machine been compromised enough where it affects our organization? And then we could have the trustworthiness of that data. Has it changed? Did something change in transit? Did somebody intercept some packets and inject something to make that data change? A good example of that is hashes, right? If you download a legit program, and I'm not talking about anything illegal downloads, but you can go get, say, images for Linux distributions, for example. And if you go to the website to get this Linux distribution, You may see right below or right above, somewhere around the download leak, you might see something like it says MD5 hash or SHA-1 hash. And it's got some characters out there that don't really mean anything. It's not readable, but it's a bunch of numbers and letters, and they're just kind of all jumbled up. That is the hash of the file that's on the web server or the file server or wherever your FTP server, wherever you're downloading it from on the web. So you click on that, you go ahead and download that file, and you can hash that out at home. What you're doing is checking the integrity, the trustworthiness of that data. So you hash it out, you get a number, you take your number and you compare it to what's on the web, because the web author, hopefully, if they haven't been compromised, put that hash on their website. And if they match, then you know the trustworthiness is good. The integrity of that file is good. But if it doesn't match, maybe the web server was compromised. Maybe somebody put a bogus file out there, or something happened in transmission. Maybe you got a corrupt file. You missed something didn't get downloaded, or you were a victim of a man-in-the-middle attack. I could go on and on. But that's integrity, the trustworthiness. You can trust that download was okay. And then what about the A? It's probably the easiest one to understand when it comes to the CIA triad, and that's availability. Is the data there when you need it? Are the services there when you need them? If you have a cloud provider, let's say you have services in the cloud that you're the customer, right? You're going to have an agreement with that provider of when your services are going to be there. Are they always available? 100% uptime is not really feasible. I've had many discussions with other IT pros, security professionals. We've kind of come to the consensus it's not possible, because if you're down for 1 second, that's not 100%. I don't care how many nines you have after the decimal spot, it's not 100%. So most of the time that's unfeasible. Probably heard of the 5 nines or the 6 nines. Are you going to be up 99.999% of the time, or 99.9999% of the time? Was that 6? Right? So the 5 nines or the 6 nines. That's what you say. I'm going to be up almost 100% of the time. I think like the 5 nines is like 30 minutes a year is the downtime you can have, and the 6 nines is like 5 minutes a year. Well, that's not very long for 365 days. So that's a pretty good goal, right? But that's availability. Is it there when we need it? If I was to get on my cloud provider and try to check my web-based email, is it there? Is it available to me all the time, or almost all of the time? What's the number one threats to our availability? If you think about that, are you there? Is DOS attacks, a denial of service attack. And we're going to talk about that one a little bit later too. Could be a denial of service, could be a distributed denial of service, right? Those DDoS attacks you may hear about. If I'm constantly flooding you with information and you can't service any more requests, well, that affects the availability of your services if you're the provider or if you're the customer. If I'm the customer and I can't get to my cloud services or my shared services or whatever you want to call them out there because somebody else is inundating you with tons of data, I can't get my stuff. So security governance. Now, when we're going to talk about security governance, it's another one of those key areas. We're going to talk about the alignment of the security functions when it comes to security and the alignment of our business objectives, the organizational processes, our roles and responsibilities when it comes to security of who does what, when and why and where, the control frameworks, or some of the control frameworks. There are tons of them out there. We'll talk about what they are. And then due care and due diligence. So the alignment of the security functions. When we're trying to get IT in alignment with business processes, because for years and years and years, back when I started in IT, we were thought of as a back office function. That's the IT team over there. They don't, they take care of our computers. They don't really do anything when it comes to the business functions. Because what would we do back in the day, right? We only spent the money. We had a budget, maybe. If not, we were usually thrown up under somebody else, and they had a budget. We had to beg for money because we needed a new switch or put a firewall in place because we were trying to mitigate something. We just use company resources. We didn't ever make any money, right? We don't, make money. If you, manufacture tires, you may have an IT team, but the IT team and the security folks and everybody else that's involved with that team, they don't make money by selling tires. They're trying to take care of your computers and your infrastructure, make sure your machines are running properly. They can save you money as far as preventing downtime, but that's where we have to align our security functions of do this, and don't do this with the business objectives. We have to prove our worth. We have to show them what the worth is of our security functions, of what we say we need to be doing and what we say we really shouldn't be doing that. We really shouldn't be posting all that on our social media websites about the latest and greatest product that we have coming out. I know you want to brag, and I know that makes you feel good, but you're also putting competitive intelligence information out there. Maybe it's violating patents or trademarks or privacy laws. So we have to be careful with that. So we have to align this, all right? You're going to hear terms like cybersecurity, information security, security governance. Those are all buzzwords when it comes to lining up our security functions with these business processes. So when it comes to security governance, the intent of governance is supposed to guarantee that the appropriate information security activities, the things that we do daily, are being performed to ensure that the risks are appropriately reduced. So we do all this stuff in our businesses, our organizations, all day long, and we have risks associated with that. But we want to make sure with security governance, as a security officer or whatever title you have, that you're minimizing the risks as much as possible. We don't want to do something that has a high risk to our company, to our organization. That's only introducing vulnerabilities, and we're going to talk about those a little bit later. But you're introducing weaknesses. You're trying to be able to be exploited by somebody, an attacker, a hacker, whatever label you want to put on them. So again, we want to make sure that we have security governance in place. Our security professionals are doing their job and trying to minimize that risk as much as possible. Now, we also want to make sure that our information security investments are appropriately directed. So what that means is, we get a budget, we get some money, and are we spending that money wisely? Sure, we can say, okay, Mr. IT team, security folks, here's your budget, here's $1 million for a year. Well, if we see the latest and greatest firewall, it may have more bells and whistles than a circus. But if it's over the top or it doesn't meet our needs, but we've spent 10% of our budget on this one device already, is that appropriate? Are we spending money wisely? That's part of security governance as well. We don't want to spend more money to protect something than what we're protecting is worth in the first place. We don't want to buy a $100,000 piece of hardware, a control, something to mitigate risk, something to protect us when we're only protecting $25,000 worth of data or services or equipment. Doesn't make sense. Security governance. We want to make sure that executive management has visibility into the program, and we need to make sure they're asking questions to determine that effectiveness of the program. We have to get them involved. We need executive or upper management buy-off on what we do. Again, it goes back to proving our worth, proving that we do know what we're doing when it comes to security, when it comes to security governance, that we're not going to, have smoke and mirrors, say, well, we really have to have this, and we start talking in a bunch of technical terms that they might not understand, and now all of a sudden, the flux capacitor is out, and we need this because the laser's on the fire. All that's not going to make sense to them. And it might sound cool. We make it sound amazing because we want this. But do we need it? That's where security governance comes in. So we want to line up our information security management with the missions, the goals, and the objectives of the organization. That's the alignment of those security functions. All right? We want to make sure that what we say needs to be in place meets the goals of the organization. We don't want to choke off the objectives or choke off the mission and goals of our organization because we're so strict with our security governance or so strict with our security, procedures and policies that we may have in place. We want to make sure that the business can continue to flow and continue to make money, because that's going to be the bottom line that drives management. So they need to continue doing what they're doing, but at the same time, we have to interject ourselves to make sure that everything is properly secured, that we're not leaking information, that we don't have, PII getting out there. We're going to talk about that a little bit later too. That's that personal information. We got to make sure that everybody's following the right policies, password policies, web use policies, social media policies. All right, there's tons of things that we have to do to align our security functions. And that's all this whole book is about, really, is making sure that information security management, or your job as an ISO, security officer, or security manager, whatever title you have, lines up with the business objectives. We can make assessments on risks and mitigation techniques, and then we want to communicate those, again, to executive or upper management. Now, the higher we can get it up the chain, the better, all right? Because we need to be heard, properly and effectively. If we're way down here on the chain and we just have to tell a team lead, what if that team lead doesn't have good rapport with somebody on upper management or the board or the CIO or CEO or the COO? One of those C-class levels, right, that's what we strive for. But what if they don't have a good rapport? What if we say we need this because of X, Y, and Z, and it's totally legitimate. We're staying within budget. It is reasonable, and we need this control put in place to mitigate a particular risk. What if they can't communicate that up? Something's going to happen. Something bad may happen. So again, we want to make sure that we're looking at all of our risks and the mitigation techniques that we're going to put in place to lower or lessen those risks. We need to get that up to upper management as high as possible. And again, don't make it sound super technical. You may be the smartest IT person in the organization, but if you explain things at a level up here, and your COOs or your CEOs, they're intelligent folks, but they're not technical folks. If they understand technology down here, you're going to be talking over their head. And either they're not going to understand and say, well, maybe we don't need that. Or they halfway understand and they're going to tell you, we don't need that, or that's too much money, or come up with another plan, because you can't communicate on their level. So when we make these assessments on risk and mitigation on what we're going to do to lessen this, make sure that we're heard properly, get it to the right person, and speak the right language. And I don't mean English, French, or Italian. Speak the right technical language. Bring it down on their level. Now, when it comes to organizational processes, we know, or you may not know, businesses don't always stay the same. They are always evolving, because we're hopefully, you as a human and in your IT career, you're always evolving as well. We're trying to get better, right? We want to get better, faster, stronger, right? We got to get smarter. Businesses do the same thing. They find something that works and they try to improve upon it to make more money and to service their customers better. And they may evolve in different ways. They may come up with more products, different customer service schemes. They're always trying to get better and improve upon themselves. We have to be prepared for that. Things can change from day to day, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. We have to be prepared for that. And what I'm talking about is prepared as far as security. I'm not saying one day you come in and now you have to wear a shirt and tie, where yesterday you only had to wear a polo shirt. Not those kind of changes. If we decided that, well, we have been client server based, now we're throwing everything in the cloud. All right, we're going to, I need you to go find us a cloud service provider, and we're going to start putting our email in the cloud. We're going to put our collaboration in the cloud. We're putting everything out there. Go make it happen, right? You ever had that happen before? I have multiple times, not necessarily about the cloud, but they come up with an idea and they say, you're IT, you're a security professional, go do what's best. Here's your budget. So you got to be prepared for that. Maybe you thought about that before, right? So you have some ideas already, but now you have to go find out what's going on because the business is evolving, the business is changing, and that's totally going to affect your job. Think about if you had everything in-house and now all of a sudden you're moving it all to cloud-based. That's a big responsibility that you got to think about, right? Who's going to move all the data? When are we moving all this data? Are we doing it all at once? Or are we going to do it in chunks? Who's responsible for the security? Are we going to encrypt the data? How are we going to get the data up there? Is it going to be a straight copy, some type of replication? Do we have support for this? Where's the data going to be kept physically? Yeah, it's in the infamous cloud. It's out there on the internet somewhere. That's great. But physically, it's got to be somewhere. Where is that? Who has access to that? Do we have rights to visit that data center? On and on and on. Tons of things that we have to be prepared for. So again, companies evolve. They're looking to grow, to change, to get better. We, as security professionals, we have to be able to adapt and adjust to meet those needs. And if we don't, well, either the business is going to fail, or that's going to be one of those resume generating events for us where we may have to go help another organization because they're moving on. And if we're not ready to move on, we may not be in the position that we need to be in, and we need to go find something else, right? Now, when it comes to these organizational processes, some of these things that could change would be like an acquisition or a merger, right? If it's a merger or acquisition, that's organizations combining, right? You have company A, company B, they kind of do the same thing. They may be struggling a little bit, or one may be struggling, one may be doing very good. But company A likes what company B is doing as far as their concepts, their proof of concepts, the products they have maybe, so they can merge. Or company A could just acquire company B. And now their employees come over here. Their security policies come over here. That's right, their threats come over here. So what, an acquisition or merger as a security manager, you have to think about that. Well, now I've got double the threats possibly. I'll have more risk involved. What about the vulnerabilities? You may not know anything about their security posture over here in company B. And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to inherit all of their problems. We have to think about that. We have to be ready for that. Different data types, different technologies they use. We may use a couple vendors over here. They may use completely different vendors over here. Is that going to be a learning curve for somebody? Is their IT team going to merge with ours? Just getting away from all the technical stuff and policies and IT. What about just personalities in general? Have you ever got thrown together and you say, okay, you two don't know each other, but now you have to secure this whole network? I've been in IT a while. We always like to think that we're the ones that are right. Well, company A may be doing things the right way. Company B may be doing things the right way. You bring them together, and now who's right? Who has control? You might have to think about business partner changes. If company B did business with another company C, but we didn't, now we have to think about their threats, their vulnerabilities, their risk. What type of relationship did they have? Did they allow them to come into the infrastructure? Did they follow security policies? So acquisition and mergers, again, they're combining. We're taking two companies and combining them or bringing one over. Now, some mergers, they can be friendly. They say, oh, hey, you've got something to offer, you've got something to offer. Let's come together for the better of both companies. We can service our customers better. We can make a better bottom line dollar. So that would be friendly, right? Everybody's on the same page. But could be a hostile. You may have a hostile takeover or something like that, where you're acquiring, not really a merger. Company B's kind of struggling over here. Company A, we're doing pretty good. And again, I like some of your products or your services, the way you do things. So I'm just going to buy you out. I'm going to acquire your company. So again, goes back to when I said get away from the technical stuff for a second, just think about personalities. If you're merging and everybody's happy about it, people tend to work together a little bit better. But if you feel like you've been acquired or forced to do something, so you can either come work for us or you can go find another job. Well, if you want to keep your job, if you have to keep food on the table, you're going to take this job, but you may not be real happy about it. So when you start talking about threats and vulnerabilities, disgruntled employees, new policies, data types, those personalities, those bad feelings or negative feelings may affect some of that. So we have to take all that into account. You may have divestitures or spinoffs where it's the opposite. We're breaking it apart now, right? The opposite of an acquisition or the opposite of a merger. That may involve spinning off part of the organization or possibly a complete liquidation of an existing organization. So now we're going the other way. And as a security professional, what does that mean for us? Well, do we have data loss? We have a company here and we've gotten so large and maybe we're in those business silos. Maybe you've heard of that. And this silo is doing its own thing and it's doing great. And this silo is doing its own thing and doing great. So we might spin it off. And now this is its own little company. And this is its own little company. But did we lose any data when that happened? Surely they communicated somehow being in their own company. But, do we have data loss? Did some of the data that this silo used is in this silo? So did we lose that information? Think about threats opened by IT holes, right? If we spin off, or if we break up, well, IT jobs may be lost. Did we lose any security analysts? Did we lose any developers that were, good as far as when it came to security? Do we have those holes there? Did somebody just say, well, I don't want to do this, I'm going to retire? Maybe it was time for them, right? Did that leave a hole in IT? And now we have to bring in an intern or somebody that doesn't understand our security posture. So we may have threats opened by those IT holes, security holes by people or those services like I mentioned. Maybe they're missing now and we have to plug those holes in, right? We don't want Swiss cheese. We want a solid piece of cheese. We don't want those security holes in there. We want to plug those holes up so those threats aren't coming in. Because those holes, right, we haven't talked about this yet, but you may very well know this, is, those are vulnerabilities. Those are weaknesses introduced into our infrastructure now. And we don't want that. We don't want vulnerabilities. We want to try to plug as many holes as possible to minimize our risk. Could have governance committee. Now, these folks are responsible for recruiting and maintaining the governance board for, say, a particular company or for a particular organization. These guys are responsible for determining any missing qualifications and characteristics needed to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of our board. So we need to make sure, try to help them, ensure that the committee understands at a pretty high level, we don't have to get way down in the weeds, but at a high level, the importance of information security and the importance of risk management. Again, and I'm probably going to say this through every domain, we have to know our audience. We have to talk on the right level. If I'm talking to another security professional, I can use technical terms. I can use security terms. If I'm talking to upper management that understands business processes and mergers and all that business stuff, I don't want to talk at a technical level, just like I don't want him talking to me about business and banking and all the processes, because I may not understand all of that. I'm a technical person, and they're not. So know your audience. So again, that high level. We want to ensure that the committee recruitment exercises for new board members include requirements for information security, risk aptitude as well. When it's needed, it's not always needed, but we need to make sure that they understand that. And maintain a working relationship with these committee members. Establish that rapport. We also want to be available to respond to specific risks, privacy, and information security questions that they may have. Again, that's what we're there for. They rely on us for security, for IT security, data security, network security, whatever type of security, encompassing security of the whole building. They rely on us for that. We have to be there, ready to go to answer any questions because, again, we're down here. We're the technical folks. They're not so technical sometimes. And I'm not saying that all CEOs are ignorant when it comes to technology. Please don't think I'm saying that. They just have a different mindset of what's going on in the business. They hired you to be the security professional. That's why you're the security professional. So they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to keep up with the latest trends. They don't have to keep up with the latest technology. That's what they have you for. So that's what I mean when I say they don't talk at that level. I'm not saying they can't understand you fully, but you're there for a reason. If they could do it all, they wouldn't need you in the first place.
Start with new learning now